Heute haben wir die Gelegenheit, die seltene Gelegenheit, einen ganz berühmten Mediziner hier in Wien zu interviewen. Und zwar handelt es sich um Dr. Peter McCullough, seines Zeichens Arzt und Kardiologe und einer der ersten scharfen Kritiker der Pandemie. Er hat schon im März 2020, also in den Anfängen, erkannt, dass was da vorgeschrieben wird von der WHO und von den Gesundheitsbehörden, keine medizinische Relevanz und keine medizinische Evidenz hat. Ihm war klar, dass eine normale medizinische Behandlung das Problem lösen würde, aber wie wir wissen, wurde die Pandemie durchgedrückt von den Gesundheitsbehörden gleichzeitig weltweit. Wir wollen jetzt über ein paar Fragen reden, die Erfahrungen, die seither gemacht worden sind, beleuchten, insbesondere was für Folgen die Impfungen gehabt haben für die Personen. Peter McCullough hat zum Beispiel einen Patienten, der 55 Jahre alt ist und seit 3,5 Jahren die Spike-Proteine und verschiedene andere Elemente, Inhaltsstoffe der Impfstoffe in sich trägt und krank ist. Und dann wollen wir auch noch darüber sprechen, wie MAHA sich entwickelt, also das Make America Health Again von Robert F. Kennedy, dem Gesundheitsminister der Trump-Regierung. Und wir wollen darüber reden, was die WHO und anderen Gesundheitsbehörden mit Hantavirus und ähnlichen neuen Pandemieversuchen gemacht haben. So, I'm glad to welcome Peter McCullough in Vienna. And I hope that we will have a nice conversation. Let me start with my first question about your studies, which I just today wrote an article about.
I was stunned to learn in one of my patients who agreed to be in research that we found evidence of the Pfizer messenger RNA vaccine circulating in his bloodstream and deposited into his skin, producing the vaccine-derived spike protein, which we know is dangerous to the human body. We found all of this present in him 3.5 years or longer after taking his third Pfizer vaccine. This is unprecedented. There has been no prior attempt to understand how long the vaccine lasts in the human body and whether or not it continues to produce the spike protein. In this seminal case, and it's important to understand, there's always a first case. In this first case, we were stunned to understand how long did it last in the human body, and it could even be longer than 3.5 years. Why? Kariko and Weissman in 2022 won the Nobel Prize for pseudouridination. They took human messenger RNA, replaced uracil base pairs with pseudouridine, and when all of the uracils are replaced, the synthetic messenger RNA becomes indestructible by human RNases. So as we sit here today, those who've taken messenger RNA vaccines, there may be no way of getting this out of the human body once it's injected, and there appears to be no way to shut off the production of the dangerous spike protein. We simply don't know in everyone is there persistence of messenger RNA and spike protein like this case example, and we don't know in everyone if there are health consequences. There are individuals who've taken now 6 or 7 messenger RNA injections, and they are ostensibly fine as far as we can tell. There are others who have suffered bona fide vaccine injury syndromes in the seminal case published. And this was recently published in the European Society of Medicine Archives journal, which is fully peer-reviewed journal, that this patient suffered blood clots, deep venous thrombosis, and pulmonary emboli after receiving the vaccines. Now, he previously had a blood clot before the pandemic, so he was genetically predisposed, and he suffered MRI-proven myocarditis or heart inflammation. He has a whole list of additional problems with the vaccines: neurologic injury, gastrointestinal autoimmunity. But the blood clots and myocarditis are bona fide examples. It's my personal observation that those being harmed by the COVID-19 vaccines, even years after taking them, they have a genetic predisposition to vaccine injury. That is, a genetic predisposition with either sarcomeric or non-sarcomeric mutations in the heart, genetic predispositions for blood clotting or for neurologic injury. And it may explain in part why some people are fine after the vaccine and others are harmed. The other big variable, and we have a hint that it exists in this seminal case, is that not all batches are the same. Some vaccine vials had probably little or no messenger RNA. Others were loaded. In our patient, the vials of vaccines that he took must have been contaminated with SV40 DNA fragments. That's simian virus 40, small fragments that are used to amplify expression of the messenger RNA in the E. coli process. SV40, it's a known cancer proto-oncogene, and it's a contaminant of the COVID-19 vaccines. Let's take the very important question of what can we do about the vaccines at this point in time. I've published now 2 peer-reviewed papers of the copyrighted McCullough protocol-based spike protein detoxification, and that's the combined use of nattokinase, bromelain, curcumin, and other mighty ingredients that help dissolve the spike protein either in plasma or within cells and help the body clear the spike protein out of the system. We believe, based on preclinical studies and about 5 peer-reviewed manuscripts, that in fact that happens. The messenger RNA itself hopefully is fatigued. At some point in time, the 5' and 3' caps at the end must come off or be degraded, and then the human enzymatic machinery can clear it out, probably through hepatic clearance. So I think there's a hope that if the liver is supercharged in detoxification, and one of the great superchargers is N-acetylcysteine, milk thistle extract, glutathione, that these substances may further enhance vaccine spike protein detoxification. For additional products coming forward, we now have on the US market, we have a messenger RNA RSV vaccine and influenza vaccine. These, just like the COVID vaccines, have skipped preclinical testing. No pharmacokinetics, no pharmacodynamics, no teratogenicity, oncogenicity, or genotoxicity studies. The full preclinical safety profile has been skipped. And how did the new vaccines do it? They did it because they claimed the COVID vaccines were a predicate standard, and the US FDA and all the other regulatory agencies accepted this. Importantly, in veterinary medicine, there are now self-replicating DNA and RNA vaccines, and they may be coming forward for human use. I'm greatly concerned as an internist and a cardiologist and a doctor practicing medicine that these genetic technologies are not thoroughly tested and vetted before use in human beings, and now we're starting to see long-lasting effects of these in the body, and that's going to include, sadly, safety events. And I do believe that messenger RNA vaccination in aggregate represents a human biomedical safety catastrophe. killed influenza vaccines historically have had very poor vaccine efficacy, far less than 50%. So a messenger RNA influenza vaccine, Fluciva is its brand name, codes for 4 different types of hemagglutinin, which is the antigen on the surface of the influenza virus. So it had hope to have greater efficacy. In the peer-reviewed prospective randomized trials of this new messenger RNA influenza vaccine, its efficacy was not much better than the traditional influenza vaccine. And the initial decision by the FDA was to decline its application. Then, with no explanation, no new data, the FDA reversed its decision and now has given market approval for Fluciva, a messenger RNA vaccine for influenza. I'm enormously suspicious that there are powerful, influential processes going on. Individuals, companies, lobbying groups.
The MAHA promise, basically, what they are doing.
An interesting point is that this apparent act, which there appears to be corruption, I'll just say it, corruption in the evaluation and approval of the Moderna influenza vaccine, is just the opposite of what MAHA, the coalition Make America Healthy Again, had promised. The promise of MAHA was radical transparency. There's been no transparency into the decision to approve a messenger RNA influenza vaccine. It's a stunning observation, a mind-blowing reality to understand that in me, I'm 64 years old, that before the age of 4, I had a total of probably 5 vaccine doses. My children, who are age 30, they had a total of 15 vaccine doses before the age of 4. A child born today gets 32 doses of vaccines, and then all the way to age 18 in the United States, it's 93 doses of vaccines. The question is, how many vaccines can the human body possibly endure as a burden, an immunologic burden, without side effects? And so the McCullough Foundation published a very important report mid-October of 2025, The Determinants of Autism Spectrum Disorder. This has been fully peer-reviewed and published in the Journal of Independent Medicine. This report's very influential. We sent it to Robert F. Kennedy, Health and Human Services. We reviewed the entirety of the peer-reviewed literature on this topic. And this is what we found. This is very important, that there is indeed an autism epidemic. When I was a child, with 5 vaccine doses, the rates of autism were 1 in 10,000. The rates of autism today in the United States, 1 in 31, 3.2% of the entire childhood population has autism. Of those, 27% have profound autism, severe cognitive impairment, repetitive injurious behavior, uncontrollable screaming, hyperacusis, unable to use the bathroom independently. They're essentially invalids for life. That's 27% of this entire population. What we found in our report is that there are predisposing factors, and I'll quickly name them. One are older parents, women over 35, man over 40, a child born prematurely before 37 weeks, the use of in utero medications such as, through the course of a pregnancy, SSRI, antidepressive, an antipsychotic, and anti-seizure medication, and some common genetic factors, So that predisposes this child to potentially develop autism. But the child is born normally, and then somewhere before the age of 4, there's a conversion to autism. We believe the trigger is combination childhood vaccines that cause in some children a subclinical encephalitis or brain inflammation, and the end result is a neuropsychiatric disorder, ADHD, autism, seizures, or tics. So as we sit here today, the greatest modifiable risk factor for autism is childhood vaccination. That's the reason why there's such an effort to try to reduce the childhood vaccine schedule. I can tell you, after Health and Human Services in the United States reviewed the McCullough Foundation report, quietly, 19 days later, on the CDC website, the statement was changed. Basically saying that they cannot rule out the connection between childhood vaccination and autism. But there was reform attempted. So Trump told Jim O'Neill, who is the acting director of Health and Human Services, to trim the vaccine schedule. And the U.S. vaccine schedule was trimmed to about that of Denmark. Denmark has better control over infectious diseases than America with fewer vaccines. It was done, and then the American Civil Liberties Union, the American Academy of Pediatrics, and an entire class of plaintiffs sued HHS, and a liberal judge overturned the reduction in the vaccine schedule, and now we're right back up to the full vaccine schedule again. Yeah, I'd give the MAHA coalition, if this was school and we're 2 years into the administration, I would give the MAHA coalition a C+. But it's a C+, not an A. And so the reason is we've essentially had no vaccine reform. We have not had the COVID-19 vaccines removed from the market, even though the pandemic has been over with for many years, and fewer than 9% of Americans are even taking boosters. There's no reason to have these on the market. There's been no work to rescind the 1986 Vaccine Injury Compensation Act. We have not had mandates, medical mandates or vaccine mandates banned. And we have not seen any fundamental reform at our agencies. We've seen some dabbling with respect to food dyes or a diet or other aspects of non-medicinal health in the United States. But I have to tell you, as a practicing doctor, I'm on the front lines taking care of patients and seeing things firsthand. I'm disappointed. For the last 7 years now, the World Health Organization has been on trial. This is very important. They had a wonderful opportunity with the SARS-CoV-2 outbreak and the COVID pandemic, the monkeypox public health emergency, bird flu, hantavirus, and Ebola. They've had 5 opportunities to show us expertise, to show me as a practicing doctor that they have expertise in managing outbreaks, and they have failed miserably. I am thrilled that President Trump pulled the United States out of the World Health Organization, in that we're not participating with international health regulations or the pandemic treaty. Probably the greatest example of WHO failure is the management of the MV Hondius incident with the hantavirus. There, the WHO was in control. There was a cruise ship. People were getting sick from hantavirus. This is a respiratory virus transmitted by rodent excreta in the air. The principles of hantavirus outbreaks are always evacuation and decontamination of the place where people are getting sick. Always. What did the WHO do once it was clear that it was hantavirus? They were in Cabo Verde, an archipelago. It's 500,000 people, an international airport. They should have evacuated that ship there and done sampling for rodent excreta, examined the ship's rodent logs, and gotten everybody to safety. But what did they do? They locked down the ship. They made more people get sick. Sadly, a woman was hospitalized, still is hospitalized in Paris. She got hantavirus during that lockdown period. To make matters worse, the WHO put people into biosecurity centers in Europe, in the United States. The hantavirus ANDV strain is not spread person to person. The WHO stuck with that false narrative. A paper by Toledo and colleagues clearly rules out person-to-person spread. So people were unnecessarily detained. They were needlessly infected with the virus and got sick, and the WHO completely failed. So if the world needs any more evidence that the WHO is not competent, they have it all in front of them.
And for whom are they working? Not for the patients, obviously.
Remember, the WHO doesn't directly take care of patients. Neither does the CDC. So let me tell you in America how big this is. The CDC has 12,000 employees, many with the same training background that I do. They have a budget of $9 billion. They don't see or examine a single patient. They don't treat anyone. They don't provide any medicines. This is a giant waste of money. The CDC and the WHO are supposed to be providing me advice as a practicing doctor because I have medical authority and I make the decisions. But instead, they are consuming resources, assuming power, and behind the scenes, one can just go to a WHO meeting and find the connections between the World Economic Forum, the Gates Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation, the Wellcome Trust, CEPI, the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness and Innovation, Gavi, Unitaid. You can see that there is a cartel, a biopharmaceutical complex that's been formed, and the WHO appears to be the master communication center of this complex. Thank you.